Okay, it's a few minutes after 3, so we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. My name is Janice Dysart, and I see Joe just put a link to the handout that we sent out earlier today. It's really just sort of an outline of what I'm going to cover, as well as some of the URLs I'm going to use. And as you know, I'm going to talk about where to publish your research. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about journals, but if anybody is interested in books, I can say a few things about books at the end of the session. And if you have any questions, you can just put them in chat, and I'll try to be good about looking at chat as I'm talking. If not, you can always unmute yourself and say, I have a question, but hopefully I can keep track of chat. And let's just get started. There are basically three kinds of journals that you might be interested in publishing in. First, there's the traditional ones, which have been around since since the 1600s. And these are the ones the library subscribes to. People have to subscribe to, they have to pay money to view the articles that are published in the journals. And sometimes these journals will charge the authors a few fees, like page charges and a charge for color illustration or a chart. That doesn't always occur. It just depends on the journal, whether there are any fees involved. And then the second type of journal is called open access journals. And these are journals that have really just come about in the last 20 years. And they're the overall trend for journals is we're gradually moving basically to all open access, but we're in the transition period now, so it's a little bit hit and miss, and it's kind of rocky. But these journals, as soon as the article is published, it is freely available for everyone to read. There's no subscriptions involved. However, there may be article processing charges for the authors, and these can range from a few dollars to thousands of dollars, depending on the journal. And in some cases, the journals, you can publish the article for free. And we'll be talking a little bit more about those in a few minutes. And then there are hybrid journals, which is what a lot of the traditional journals are turning into, where they will publish traditionally articles. They still require a subscription for access, but they will also publish open access articles if the author wants to pay a fee. And then there are now starting to become mandates where if an article, if the research is funded by a particular grant from a particular agency like NIH, the articles have to become open access after 6 months or 12 months, depending on the organization that funded the grant. And in that case, the publisher of the article, they will set the article to open access after that time period. So you don't have to worry about doing anything about that. That will be done for you. Oops. Now let's go. I was trying to move my little chat window so I can see if anybody has questions. Things to consider when you're starting out is you want to publish in a journal that's visible, that people can easily discover, so they can find your research. So you really want to publish in journals that are indexed by some of the big databases like Scopus or PubMed, which is a medical database, or some of the subject ones like Compendex, which is engineering, or Business Source Premier, which is a business database. So you want people to be easily able to find your research. And then you do want to look closely at the cost, because that can certainly be a factor. And then, of course, you want to factor in the prestige or reputation of the journal. Probably if you're just starting out publishing articles, you probably won't be getting into the most prestigious journals, but there are certainly quite a few to choose from that have very good reputations. And then in some cases, people care about the speed of publication. That's really something that ever since COVID happened that people are paying closer attention to, and publishers are starting to give you that information up front. And it just depends on your subject area, whether that is going to factor into your decision or not. My slideshow isn't moving there. Okay. Now, actually, another kind of journal that I didn't mention up front are called predatory journals. And I'm just wondering, by maybe a show of hands, have people heard about predatory journals? I see at least one person has. Just a few of you. Okay. Well, predatory journals are also a recent occurrence. They're taking advantage of the open access journals that are coming out. And they're not in it to really make your research widely known to people and to advance knowledge or anything like that. They're really in it to make money. They want to get your article processing fee. And chances are they're not, well, not chances are, they will not be indexed by any of the major indexes. And they don't really have standards. They claim to have peer review, but usually they claim the peer review is so fast that it's really impossible. Like they'll say it'll be peer reviewed in a week. And in the real world, you just don't get legitimate peer review in just a week. They also, some of the characteristics of them is that they'll claim to have an impact factor, and we'll talk more about impact factors in a few minutes. That's a ranking of journals, but only a certain set of journals get impact factors. So they may say they have an impact factor, but I'll show you in a minute a tool you can use to look up journal impact factors, and you won't find them in there. And they will claim they have an ISN number, which is an international standard serial number, which anybody can get. It's just an identifying number for a publication, in this case, a journal. And so it's not anything that requires any standards to achieve. And probably one of the main characteristics of these journals is they tend to send out emails asking people to submit articles to their journals. So anytime you get an email, with asking you to submit a journal article, you should be suspicious. That should make you very wary about this journal, because I don't really know of any legitimate journals that send out emails asking for submissions, because unless possibly if the journal is brand new, but most journals that are, reputable, they get more than enough submissions for articles. They don't need to go out and ask people to submit articles to them. And I thought I'd show you an example of a website of one of these predatory journals. It's called Asset. And usually their websites are they're often a little bit cluttered. In this case, this is saying in big letters to publish papers in Scopus, and then it gives you all these acronyms. Well, you don't publish a paper in Scopus. Scopus is a database that indexes articles that are published in journals. So right away, that's a tip off that they're not really a legitimate publisher. And then all these abbreviations, I don't even know what these abbreviations are. You would have to go out and Google them and see what they're talking about. But it's just something to be aware of, to be suspicious. Also, a lot of these publishers, they tend, let's see, we look at journals. They tend to publish journals in a lot of different subjects. Most journal publishers are a little more specialized, except for the really big ones that you've heard of, like Elsevier and Springer Nature. Those are so big that they publish on a lot of different subjects. But but this has a lot of different subject areas. So that's another point to just be a little suspicious about. Let's go. And I heard just a few weeks ago, I heard an estimate of that there are around 35,000 predatory journals now. And that's probably about as many equal to the number of legitimate journals. So there are a lot of journals, you know, predatory journals out there. So this is just be cautious. And I'm now going to show you how you can evaluate journals so you can make sure you stay away from the predatory journals. We've got several different things you can do to evaluate a journal. You can look at the, and I think, excuse me, I think I'm gonna go back to my, I think I left off a slide. Oh, I did. Sorry about that. Let's go from current slide. I forgot to talk about how to find journals that you want to publish in. I talked about what to avoid predatory journals, but I jumped over this one. So let's go back. If you're, looking for a journal to publish in, you've got lots of different options. You can talk to colleagues. You can talk to, if you're a graduate student, you can talk to your advisor or, whoever you're working with in the lab with, if you're doing lab research. And you can talk to librarians. Librarians are very knowledgeable about all the journals that are out there. You can also look at the articles you're referencing in your research and see where they're published. You might want to look closely at those journals. And then you can also look at the big databases, which I mentioned, Scopus and Web of Science. These are really good tools to use. And let's just look at Scopus. And Scopus, hopefully you're familiar with Scopus. If not, it is a big database that covers subjects in all different fields. Web of Science is very similar. It does the same. They cover a lot of the same journals, but they also cover different journals. And I can just look up, let's just look up, let's see, what should I say? Let's just look up something real easy. Just look up monarch butterflies. And we get a lot of articles on the topic, but what you want to come over to in the left-hand column is you want to look at source title. And Web of Science does something very similar. It's also in the left-hand column. And if you click on source title, you can see the journals that are publishing the most in this area. And this will be the number of articles in this answer set from this journal. And if you click on view more, it gives you more. And you can eventually click on view all. Oh, you can't. Can you see now? I just saw the note, we can't see your browser. Because I thought sorry about that. Let me go back. Let's see. We're here. Okay. Are you seeing Scopus now? Well, okay. I'll stop the share and reshare. Okay. Thanks for the tip. And let's see. Okay, I want this one. Okay. I'm into Scopus and I just did a search on monarch butterflies and let's go to the results screen. So can everybody see Scopus now? Let me go back to chat. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Little technical glitch. Okay, so you get into the left-hand column here, and you go down to source title, and you click on source title, and then you'll see the names of the journals that pop up here on the left. And the number in parentheses is the number of articles in this answer set that are from this journal. So you can get an idea of the big ones, and you can click on view all, and you'll get the entire set. Now, Scopus also indexes a few books, so you will see a few book titles mixed in here, or you could. But you can go through here and you can see there's quite a few possibilities that you might want to try out. And so you might want to just note some of those and then do a little more research about them. And let's good. Sorry, my Zoom stuff is covering up my screen a little bit. Okay, let's see if we can go back to PowerPoint. Okay, are people seeing my PowerPoint slide now? No? Huh. It says I am screen sharing. Well, shoot. Okay. We will. Okay. Are you seeing it now? I reshared. Okay, good. Okay, this could get a little crazy because I wanted to link out a few times here, but we'll see. A new thing that people are doing is journal recommenders. Those have kind of become popular in the last few years. And a lot of publishers are doing this, like Elsevier, I think IEEE, which is an engineering one, has one. Springer Nature, just quite a few of the major publishers are coming out with ones. And I thought we'd look at one, which is Open Access Journal Finder. We'll see. Okay, are you still looking at the PowerPoint slide? Are you seeing the Open Access Journal Finder? Huh. Okay. Well, let's do new share. Okay, now you should be seeing the Open Access Journal Finder. And what it's asking, great, thank you for the sign, positive sign here. And these all work about the same way. They'll want you to plug in like an abstract. In this case, they're asking you for your email address. And I'm going to go back to Scopus and just I'm just picking out an article so I can copy and paste. Whoops, the abstract. And now I'll go back to the Journal Finder. And this does make you put in your email address. Oops. And I don't know why, because it doesn't do anything with it that I can tell. And they do claim, all these publishers do claim that they don't retain your abstract that you type in, so you don't have to worry about anybody stealing your research idea. Okay, and this gives you a list of suggestions. These are all open access journals, so you can see they give you the publisher, they give you a little bit about peer review, and in this case, they're giving you the article processing charge, which in this case is close to 1900. Plus One is a big open access publisher that's it's one of the most successful ones. And it's close to 1,600. And insects is another one. I think that's Swiss francs, and I think that's about 2002. So, and if you were interested in any of these, you would want to look at these other things like the editorial board and review process, instructions to authors, and you'd want to look at that for any of the journals you're interested in to get all the details. So I do have, I didn't mention up front that I do have a guide on the library website that goes into much more detail on all this. And that link to the guide is on that handout that I gave you, and I'll show it to you at the end. But on that guide, I list a lot of these different journal recommenders and a lot of additional links that you can use to go search for articles for your research. And I'll just go this way. We're going to do reshare my screen and go back to PowerPoint. Okay, and let me get my chat back. Okay. Well, okay, we talked about predatory journals. And okay, now we're back to evaluating the journal once you have a list of journals. You have several different things you can do. Certainly if you're getting a journal from like the Elsevier journal recommender or one of the main publishers, you can assume that's a good journal because they only publish legitimate journals. But you can check Scopus or Web of Science to see if a journal is indexed in there. Both Scopus and Web of Science have standards that journals have to meet in order to be published in that journal, in that data, or I shouldn't say published, in order to be indexed in that database. And actually Web of Science has sort of two tiers. They have what they call Web of Science Core, which are the journals that they consider the best that will have journal impact factors computed for them. And then they have their emerging sources. And these are the journals, the newer journals, and maybe journals from smaller publishers that they're indexing in Web of Science. And when they get to a certain point in their standards and probably how often they're cited, they get elevated to the core group. Scopus and Web of Science, as I said, they index a lot of the same journals, but some different ones too. And then there is a directory of open access journals. And again, this directory has standards, and you have to meet those standards in order to be included in this directory. And so this is a very good directory. This is where you want to go if you want to check on an email solicitation from a journal that's an open access journal, because if it's a legitimate open access journal, it should be listed in this directory. And then lastly, there's a committee on publication ethics called COPE, and pretty much the legitimate publishers, they become members of this committee. And so if your publisher is in here, that means they meet certain standards of publication, and it should be a good journal. And then we've got journal rankings, and journal rankings are, I will say, they're somewhat controversial. There's a lot of criticism about them, but they're out there and people are using them. So we can't just ignore them. And there's actually three now, which I've listed. And journal impact factor is the one that's been around the longest. It's the most well known. And it is created, it is computed by the company that puts out Web of Science, which is Clarivates. And as I mentioned, they only compute the values of impact factors for journals that are in their core edition. But that's still thousands of journals in all different, now it's all different subject areas. It used to be that they didn't compute humanities journals, impact factors for humanities journals, but they're changing with that. Now there's a new measurement that's just come out actually this year, just a few months ago, that's also put out by the Web of Science people, and that's the Journal Citation Indicator. And this is a value that they assign to all the journals indexed by Web of Science, no matter where whether they're in the core edition or they're in the emerging sources, they're in everything. Now, the journal impact factor is essentially the average number of times an article is cited in a particular journal over the last several years. The Journal Citation Indicator is similar to that, but what they've done is they've normalized the values. So if a journal has a Journal Citation Indicator of 1, it's basically average. And a value above 1 would be, better and better, and a value below 1 would be not as good. And you can compare journal citation indicators outside of a subject area. So they've all been normalized. So you can compare all journal citation indicators, no matter what field the journal is in. Journal impact factors really only, you have to compare the impact factor to the journal, to other journals in that subject field. They're kind of specialized. And I thought we'd go into journal citation reports. Well, I should mention first, CiteScore is Scopus's version of the impact factor. You see somebody's posted an article. Interesting article about one journal's efforts to work the journal ranking system and make the journal work better. And yes, there have been reports of that, and that's one of the criticisms. I know they've exposed editors or publishers for requiring their authors to cite other journals, that cite articles from other journals that they publish to increase the numbers in their journals. So with every metric, there's certainly a way to manipulate it. I think their Web of Science is paying close attention to that, and they are exposing publishers who are doing that. So I think it's tightening up a bit. In the last few years, they've kind of tightened up their standards. So hopefully the impact factors are a little, they're actually, I mean, basically they're one measurement. It's just one, it's a tool you can use to sort of give you an idea of the better journals or the top, better journals in the field are the ones that are read more and cited more. But there are certainly good journals that may not have impact factors. So you don't want to just stick with journals that have impact factors. But I thought we'd look at journal citation reports real quick. And so I'll click on this and then I'll reshare my screen. Okay, stop share. Share screen. Okay, here we are. Okay, you're looking at journal citation reports. And this would be a good place to go if you're, you have a journal that claims that it has an impact factor. You can look in this, it's called Journal Citation Reports, and see if the journal actually has an impact factor. If it's not listed in here, it doesn't have an impact factor. So you can look up a journal by name, or another thing you can do, which is useful for finding places to publish, is to look up, you can look up a topic, a real general topic or a subject area. And it will have this drop down menu. That's why I was typing so slow. I didn't want to skip the drop down menu. And you can see it lists journals that have entomology in the title. But what I want to go to is the category name. I'm going to go to category name and see it has 106 journals in the category entomology. And now I'm seeing the list of journals that are ranked according to journal impact factor. And then they also had the journal citation indicator, and you can see, you know, the values are a little bit different because this is normalized and this one's not. And in this case, you can see, well, the top journal has an impact factor of over 19, but it quickly drops down to 5 and gets further down. I mean, basically any journal that has an impact factor would be considered a good journal. And chances are, if you're starting out, you're just starting to publish research, you may not be able to get into the what are considered the top tier journals, the ones with the highest. Of course, Annual Review is a little bit specialized, but into the top tier. But any of these would be good. So this is also a good place. It's a good place to verify, you know, it's a legitimate journal, a good journal to publish in, and it's a good place to get ideas for where to publish. You can scan through these titles and just get some ideas, because these are from all different publishers. I think if you, they just changed the interface of journal citation reports, but I think if you click on the title, it takes you to the actual page for the journal, and it gives you the publisher information and how often it's published, and it gives you the journal impact factor again, and some other metrics which generally speaking aren't of that much interest. But it will tell you whether or not it's open access. In this case, this one's open access. So any questions about journal citation reports? If not, we will go back to PowerPoint. And one more thing you can look at if you've got a list of journals that you're not sure about is there are various checklists that that'll take you step by step through things you should think about before you submit an article to the journal. And one that's really good is one that's called Think, Check, Submit. And they have a website, so we're going to switch back to the web in a minute. But they want you to answer yes to the questions on their checklist. And let's go to that. And here it is. And they say, think, are you submitting your research to a trusted journal publisher? Is it the right journal for your work? And here is where the checklist is. So this is really what you want to look at, is this checklist. And certainly, have your colleagues heard of the journal, and is it indexed? Is it easy to be discovered by people? We've sort of talked about that. You want to look at the journal website and look at information about the journal and make sure what kind of peer review it's using, and look up the charges to see how much, if it will cost you anything to publish in that journal. And you do want to look at the editorial board, and you really, as I say, you want to check the editorial board. You want to also check at least a few of the editors' websites and see if they list being on that board, because predatory publishers are known for just taking well-known researchers and just listing them as editors of their journals, even though that person has never even heard of their journal. So you can't, you know, if it's a publisher you've never heard of, you just have to be a little suspicious and do a little extra research to see if you really want to publish in that journal. And then we mentioned this Committee on Publication Ethics and Directory of Open Access Journals, if it's an open access journal. And so they give you lots of good information to check on. And while we're here, I'll just mention that if you're interested in publishing in a book or publishing a book chapter, they also have a good list, actually a much more extensive guide list for a checklist for whether or not you should publish in a particular publisher, publish a book by a particular publisher. And they do mention predatory publishing. And again, it's some of the same things. Have you heard of the publisher? You know, do they have a good website where they're easy to contact? Again, you want to check editors and see if they listed on their website. And to see what guidance they provide you for submitting information. So basically, you just want to research the publisher is what you're doing. And this nice checklist will take you through that step by step. Okay, let's go. Let me go back to PowerPoint for a couple of minutes. Now I'm just going to mention, oh, well, we'll do turnaround time. I mentioned at the beginning, turnaround time is becoming more important to some people, and publishers are starting to post this information in their websites or on their websites. Not all of them do it yet. So if they don't post the information, I think your only alternative is to contact the editor about whether or not the information is there. But Elsevier and Taylor and Francis are two publishers. So the larger publishers are really starting to post this information. And I hate to do this, but let's look at Taylor and Francis. So here we go. Okay, in Taylor and Francis, you can look at any of the full displays for the journal, and off on the left, they have something called journal metrics. And notice on journal websites, they're going to have all the other information you need to look at too, like the editorial board, the editorial policies, instruction for authors, aims and scope of the journal is important to look at, you know, if you want to consider publishing there, to see if your topic fits in their scope. And we'll just look at journal metrics. And you can see they list the impact factor and site score, which is the Scopus version of the impact factor. And over here on the right, they do the speed metrics. And in this case, they also give the acceptance rates, which acceptance rates aren't, up until now, they have not been widely publicized by publishers, but I think Taylor and Francis has put it out for all their journals, and Elsevier is starting to. In this case, the acceptance rate is 6%. So chances are, if you're just starting out, your odds of getting accepted, an article accepted in this journal aren't real high. So you may want to, you know, start with a different journal first. But again, speed metrics, it just depends on your topic, whether that's your field, whether that's really important. Okay. This slide is really only important probably if you're a faculty member here at the University of Missouri. The University of Missouri is a member of the AAU, and they're always trying to increase their ranking in the AAU. We're toward the bottom. And one thing the AAU does is it tracks how often research is cited, and they use the Web of Science database to do this. And so the University of Missouri is very happy if you publish in journals that are indexed by the Web of Science. And so these are the title lists for Web of Science. So these are here. I've got them on my online guide too, if that's of interest to you. But if you're just a graduate student here, that this isn't as important, though it may be, you know, depending if you end up at another academic institution, it could become important to you. And then the other tool that the university uses is academic analytics. And this is a company that tracks the research that is done by the institution. And they also have their list of journals that they track. And they've actually finally posted it. Up until recently, they didn't have a list of journals that they tracked. But you can click on this link and you can download a PDF of all the journals that they track. And so it's always useful if the journal that you want to publish in is on this list. It's just, but if it's not, academic analytics is known to add journals to their list. You just have to submit the request, and then they take a look at the journal, and then they will let you know whether they'll add it to their list of journals that they monitor. Now I was going to talk briefly about books. Are there people here that are interested in publishing in book chapters or books? I talked about books just a little bit previously. I mean, I'm not seeing anybody. I'll say just briefly, if you're looking for publishers for your book topic or your chapter, talking to your subject librarian is always good to do, because we're very familiar with the publishers in our field. You can also look at just the library catalogs like Merlin or Mobius. WorldCat is a huge national catalog of books from all around the country. So they probably have a very good sampling of what's been published everywhere. And you can search a topic on there and just see who the book publishers are that are in for the books that pop up. And if you find a book publisher, then you do want to, you know, research it some. There's nothing like impact factors. There's nothing like rankings for publishers, book publishers. So book publishers, it's a little harder to analyze. But again, you'd want to look at the editor, book editors. You could look for reviews of books that have been published by that publisher, even if they're not on your topic. That's a way to sort of get a feeling for quality. And again, on the website, you want to look for clear guidelines for the author, and just find out whatever you can about the publisher, if they're not already a well-known publisher like Oxford or Cambridge. University presses are, you know, certainly a good place to publish books. And as I pointed out earlier, there is a think, check, submit guidelines for books and chapters, which you can look at my library guide, which is at this address, and it's just on the library website. If you just type in publish in the site search box in the upper right-hand corner, it'll pop right up. So does anybody have any questions?